Roofing University with Adam and Mason.
Welcome to another episode of Metal Roofing University. I'm your host, Adam Clark, and my co-host, as always, Mason Burchett.
Hello, hello.
Putting out content is what they tell us to do.
And that's what we're doing.
That's right.
We're putting out content.
So today we're going to focus on a really common misconception and a myth, and we focus on trying to identify where consumers are most confused about the tendencies or the characteristics, the false characteristics of metal roofing. And today I think we're going to address the one that probably impacts the most people or perceives the perception is seen by the most people in a negative light. And so we're going to be talking about if metal roofing affects cell phone and wireless reception, specifically in your home.
Yeah. So this is one that's been around for a while, and it's more of like a logical argument than it is a scientific argument. It feels like that metal should have a negative effect on cell reception, right? It's tough. It's impenetrable, it's not permeable, it doesn't absorb water, it doesn't absorb anything else, so naturally it's not going to absorb radio signals,
It's going to bounce them away, in fact.
If I put a metal roof on my house, I'm never going to be able to answer a text message again. I'm never going to be able to answer another phone call. So it's kind of a logical argument, and it seems logical, but like you said, it's not really rooted in data. So we're going to take a little bit of a look at the facts.
And it's not dated in experience either, and that's what we're going to look at. Even though we can't say X number of radio waves penetrate through a metal panel that's this thick, we can tell you what our experiences have been and the experiences of our customers over the years and years that we've been in the industry. So we do want to preface this by saying that we are not electrical engineers, and we don't understand maybe the fine details and technicalities of radio waves and frequencies and transmissions. So if we say something that's not right in regards to the technical aspects, we might be a little bit dumb when it comes to that. But we do know what the
CB in my car.
CB, maybe that works. But we do know what the tendencies and the experiences are from a practical standpoint. So that's what we're going to focus on. So really, when we decided to focus on this myth first, because this is technically number 4 on our 10 most popular myths that we try to bust.
Myth number 4.
But we decided to focus on this because we feel like it affects the most people, especially in the season of COVID, where you have a lot more people working from home and socializing with family and friends from home. Dependency on phones and internet and technology has really even ramped up quite a bit from where it was even 12 months ago. And so we understand that people are not willing to jeopardize the reliability of that technology really for any reason, including applying a metal roof on their home if they believe that that's going to decrease the effectiveness of those wireless transmissions.
So metal roofing has been around for a long time. This isn't a new product. Real long time. Might surprise you actually how long it's been around. Some of the you've got a note here, Adam, that says some of the earliest applications of metal roofing date back to the 1st century BC. I mean, so we're in a really old industry here, right?
That's right. Yeah. And some of the oldest metal roofing was going to be out of copper or copper sheets. Copper is malleable, it's easy to use, which is why it's
formed by hand almost.
That's right, and that's why it's still used for a lot of purposes nowadays as well. But even back the Pantheon, if you think back to ancient, this is 27 BC is when the construction of the Pantheon is dated back to, and there are copper plates that were used for the roof on that application. So we're not talking, metal roofing's been around for 100 years. We're talking
Jesus
thousands of years.
That's
right.
Metal roofs.
That's
right.
That's right.
Yeah, this is it's pretty crazy. So that said, there's a lot of experience and experiences that have been had with metal roofing, like you said, not in the past 50 or even 100 years, but over hundreds and hundreds of years, centuries of experiences in metal roofing. Obviously, it doesn't translate to centuries of experience with cell phone reception, but there still is a lot of experiences with metal roofing.
And we'll talk about how those two industries, roofing and technology, kind of meet together, and they're kind of meeting where we're at right now. But talking more about traditional metal roofing, what's similar to what we have now. This actually formed metal dates back to the American Revolutionary War. It was actually up in Pennsylvania, where there was an engineer who actually designed the first roll former. Nice. And he was actually applying formed panels to his mansion. And that's where the first concept came from. And yeah, that's right. And that concept was actually taken, that was in the late 1700s. But that concept was actually taken and really run with, especially over in Europe. We saw a lot of applications that were becoming a little more popular and a little more widely spread over in Europe. And then you had France come in the early 18th century and really make galvanized moving. So the zinc plating on or the zinc coating on steel sheets, really a much more popular thing and reliable part of metal roofing as the roofing industry continued to grow and continued to put longer lasting products out there. So in the early 1800s, France came, they introduced galvanization to the steel sheets, and then we started to see more and more advancements in this industry, both in the Americas and over there in Europe as well. And so that is kind of when we started to see the most relevant metal roofing applications when you compare it to where we are nowadays. And I think it's important for everyone to remember that metal roofing was made without consideration of technology and the radio signals that we deal with nowadays. Right. But they
predated that.
It predated it a little bit, but it's kind of unique. When I was doing my research here, in the 1830s, there were the first theories of communicating across radio waves. And we didn't have the technology there, but I thought it was kind of cool because that's right about the same time that France really introduced the galvanized line or the galvanized process for roofing. So it all kind of started at the same time.
The revolutionary area there.
Right, even though steel roofing has predated what was done in France and in Europe and in the Americas there in the early 1800s, it was still kind of got to a place where it was going to be readily available or available to consumers in those early 1800s, and that's when the first philosophies or thoughts of radio transmission came up as well. So I thought that was kind of cool, but they were very far apart. Right. One industry was not thinking or considering the effects it was going to have on the other, but now we come together, and it's safe to say that we're in an era where both of those industries come together, and finally we have to think, what does metal roofing do that's going to affect our ability to communicate across radio waves? Right.
I mean, we're like you said, we're in an era now where homeowners are increasingly looking at how to make their homes more efficient in every possible way, how to make things convenient. Heck, you can walk into a room and say, order me some more laundry detergent, and your smart device is going to hear you and order you some more laundry detergent, right? It's where we're trying to connect everything seamlessly, so obviously homeowners will be concerned if they think a material they're putting on their house is going to impair their ability to have an efficient home. And we're talking about cell phone signal today. So it would be a concern to me as a homeowner if I didn't know any better. And I had heard from people or was under the impression that a certain material that I'm going to put on my house is going to hinder my cell reception. We live and die by our cell phones, right? We must communicate with the outside world. And it's true. We really do need to communicate with the outside world. A lot of people depend on their ability to connect to the outside world to be able to do work. People work from home. They educate from home. They attend online classes. They need to be able to have a reliable internet connection.
Yeah, and while we said earlier in the introduction, we don't have necessarily hard data to go in and say what the reliability or the interference of metal roofing is with radio transmissions and signals. What we do have is this experience. So I encourage everybody, look around. Have you ever made a phone call in a building that has a metal roof or steel walls or anything? I think if we all take a step back and think about it, that's probably part of our everyday. And if not your everyday, have you ever gone to a restaurant? Have you ever gone to a Walmart? Have you ever gone to
the mall?
All of these places,
church.
Commercial buildings in particular, are typically made up of some type of steel siding, roofing, or a combination of everything. So it's fair for us to say that even here at Best Buy Metals, all of our buildings have metal roofs, and a lot of them have metal walls. We're in this every single day, and we're on the phone every single day. Every day we're making phone calls from our cell phones, and there is no noticeable disruption to what we're experiencing now. Do we live in an area that has good service, or we have wireless towers nearby? Yeah, for sure, that makes a difference, but we are not seeing a negative impact from the buildings that we live in and operate from when it comes to our cell phone service.
Yeah, and there's a couple of logical arguments we can present here when it comes to technology. Number one is, okay, you're concerned you're not going to be able to get a text out or call out or use your phone effectively if your cell reception is hindered in your home. The majority of people have Wi-Fi in their homes now, which is a hard line directly into your home, and your cell phone's probably connected to it. So most of the time when you're at home, the data that's being used from your phone is probably being conducted through your Wi-Fi connection, not necessarily through your cell signal. So that's something to keep in mind when you're making this decision. And like you said, another thing to think about is actually the density of material. The thickness and density of material plays a lot into whether or not cell reception is going to be hindered. For example, concrete will be much more likely to hinder cell phone signal because it's porous. Concrete absorbs moisture, but it's dense and it's thick. And the thicker the material, the less likely you are going to be able to get a call out. That's why that I'm from Western North Carolina, and anybody that's listening that's from Western North Carolina knows what I'm talking about when I say if you're in Spring Creek, which is way out there in the mountains, right? You cross two mountains and then you're down in a valley. You don't have any cell reception because it can't pass through all of the dense material of the mountains. So the more dense material you have, the less likely it is that you're going to be able to get a call out. A lot of people get a roof replacement and they say, well, my cell phone reception was reduced after I had my roof replaced. And a lot of times they also had more than just the roofing material replaced. Most of the time they also had insulation replaced, new roof deck installed, and all of those things also factor in. Insulation is very thick, dense, and will hinder radio signals as well.
Yeah, and with all the other information, we'll talk a little bit more about materials and what your individual circumstances might look like that could affect reception. One thing that has become abundantly clear to us is our industry has really continued to boom and to grow, especially in the residential market. If there was a consistent failure or a consistent negative effect from metal roofing with cell phone service, people would stop buying it,
right.
or people would come back to us and say, I can't make a phone call, and we would have that experience. I mean, we would be the company, or metal roofing companies in general would be having these conversations regularly, and there would be forums about it, and there would be online chatter about, well, how does metal roofing affect cell phone service? But you really just don't see that because it's just not true.
Right.
And so again, we've seen metal roofing capture an additional 1% of the residential market every year for the past 10 years. I mean, we've really seen it grow pretty quickly. Asphalt shingles still make up the majority of the residential roofing that's out there, but metal roofing is becoming more and more and more popular, and we're finding more applications like steel siding that is gaining popularity as well. And the reality is if this failed, if this did block off cell phone reception, we would know about it, and there would be immediate repercussions. I mean, the customer base would basically dictate when the growth would stop based off of dissatisfaction with that one individual, thing that's affecting their cell phone.
Well, think about it this way. I mean, can you get a phone call out in your car? Right? I mean, your car's metal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, yeah, but it's got windows. All right, well, so does your home. I mean, the cell signal that's coming off a cell tower isn't two-dimensional. It's not, it's not planar. It's like a globe of signal that's coming off in all directions of a cell tower. And your roof is just one part element of your home. You also have walls. You've got windows. That cell signal is coming in multiple directions of your home, not just raining down from the top of the roof. So
right.
When you get a call out in your car, it's the same principle. It's wrapped in metal.
So talking out loud about this, it seems so practical to think metal roofing is not going to affect your cell phone reception, but why do you think that that's the perception in the general public, or at least to some of the general public?
I think there's such a relation to metallic materials and radio signals. It just seems, you've got the old rabbit ears that you had connected to the TV. You have to wiggle those things just a little bit, and all of a sudden, the 49ers aren't playing anymore. And I remember when I was a kid, we still had rabbit ears, and we'd bring out the aluminum foil.
Wrap them up.
Building your old
Yep.
satellite dish in the living room.
That's right.
Trying to capture a radio signal. So I think there's some of that, like stigma, that's ingrained into our subconscious that thinks metal plus radio signal equals some sort of disruption.
Yeah. And maybe, if cell phone technology never advanced to where it is, and the way we transmit across signals and the way that we receive signals, maybe metal roofing would damage, the reliability of cell phone reception. But technology has us to a place right now where you can pull your phone out in any type of environment, nearly any type of environment, as long as you're within a certain range and you don't have a mountain that's blocking the signal, and you can get reliable service. So I think it really is a perception of maybe what it used to feel like with the old TVs and the old radios, where you were really having to fight to get that signal. I mean, you really had to work for it. It's not the same. And the technology that we have now is not the same. And the way that a metal roof acts is not like a satellite. It's not directly connected to your device where it has to point in a certain direction or absorb a certain amount of signals or whatever the case may be. And you made a good point too, Mason, where you've got signals coming in from all sides, going through wood and vinyl walls, going through wood doors and windows. So,
I mean, you and I are sitting in a metal building right now that has a metal roof, has a metal siding. We are in an interior. There are several walls separating us from the outside right now, and we have great cell signal.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Steel studs are becoming really popular, especially as lumber has become popular. A lot of people are looking to design residential and commercial buildings with steel studs to build their walls and to frame their buildings out, steel trusses, steel supports. So all of those things are already in our day-to-day, and they're growing in popularity, and we're not seeing negative repercussions coming out against our cell phone service. So why don't we talk a little bit about what does affect cell phone reliability and service reliability, and see if that's related at all to the products that we do here at Best Buy Metals.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying earlier. Everything affects radio signals to an extent. Obviously, the more barriers you put between you and the source of the signal, the more diminished the signal is going to be. If you're underground in a bunker, you're going to have far less signal than if you're standing on the ground outside or on top of a hill right next to the cell phone tower. So the more distance and the more barriers you place between you, the more diminished the signal is going to be. That applies to insulation. It applies to lumber. It applies to concrete, to brick, to asphalt shingles, any kind of barrier. The more barriers between you and the signal, the less signal you're going to have.
Yeah, and what we found is for most residential applications, and really most commercial applications, the amount of material interference is going to be nominal. We're not going to even notice it. When you do start to, say, go into a basement where you're surrounded by cinder blocks and on the outside of the cinder blocks is earth, and you've got feet worth of material that a signal has to come through, that's when we see disruption begin to happen. But typically when you're above the surface of the ground, if you're not down in a basement, you really are going to experience very similar reception, whether you have an asphalt shingle roof or a metal roof, and same with siding, whether you've got vinyl or hardy board, which is a cement-based siding, or steel siding, it's all going to have a very similar experience for any cell phone user. Another thing that can affect your cell phone reception is the thickness of the materials around you, like Mason was saying, and steel can come into to be a bit more impactful. It's if you're using primary framing, if you're using these really huge primary I-beams or other steel, and they make up a majority of the structure that you're in, or they build a barrier that, if you're next to a couple of these really big beams and there's metal panels that are surrounding them, you could see disruption happen in that type of application. Although, again, the signal doesn't just come from one direction; it's coming from all around you. So we have heard of really large steel buildings with really heavy gauge structural steel, sometimes impacting cell phone reception. But again, that's a rarity, and we don't see that obviously in the residential side of the world.
Yeah, and a lot of times, I'll add to that, a lot of times what is attributed to that structure may not necessarily be, the structure might not necessarily be responsible for it. Because I'm thinking when you go to, like we were saying earlier, a mall or a Walmart, a lot of times those are flat roofs, but if you look up, you see metal panels. What you're looking at is steel decking, thick steel decking, much thicker than what you're typically seeing from a light gauge metal roofing panel. And what's the standard gauge for a steel decking panel? Like a Type B steel decking panel is probably 18 gauge. You're looking at heavy gauge steel, and then that steel is holding concrete. I mean, the purpose of steel decking is to pour concrete over top of it, and you still got great cell signal. So a lot of times what's going on in these large structures like you're talking about is there's probably interferences inside of the building, because these are usually industrial type buildings that are interfering with your cell signal. May not even necessarily be the building itself. Because you're talking about machinery, depending what kind of machinery it is, other kinds of technology that are emitting radio signals can interfere with cell signal as well. All of those are operating on different bands. They're operating on different frequencies, and frequencies that are similar can disrupt similar frequencies and result in a dissipated cell reception. So all of those things come into play. It's not always the materials. It can be other forms of technology and machinery as well. Yeah,
that's a great point. So, really what we are trying to promote is if you are considering a metal roof for your residential application or commercial application, and you're concerned that it's going to disrupt your ability to go about your life normally, specifically in regards to cell phone service or wireless service, then you should know that this is not a problem you're going to interact with. This is not a problem that you're going to have. And if you do have it, please call us, because we'd love to find out exactly, why that's happening. Just because we interact with this information every single day, and nothing has led us to believe that there's going to be a negative repercussion. People use a metal roof because they see it as being kind of this impenetrable force, this barrier. People sleep better at night under a metal roof knowing that hail and high wind and extreme weather conditions are not going to cause a problem, but they shouldn't think that there is a cost for having that type of security when it relates to their cell phone reception. It's just not true. It's just not an experience that we've ever interacted with.
Right, and if your home does have diminished cell reception, there are things you can do to boost that. Number one would be get Wi-Fi, because if you have Wi-Fi, you can still use your phone inside of your house. Another thing is there are cell signal boosters for $50 or less that you can install in your home that amplify your cell phone signal outside the house if you feel like that's a concern. And
when people call thinking that we're Best Buy, we should start telling them that.
We should actually start talking those. That's a great idea. We just came up with a new product line. So there are things you can do. If you think it's attributed to your metal roofs, probably not. It could be attributed to a number of different things, but regardless, there are still things that you can do if you're in a home that has bad cell signal.
Yeah, and if you get to a place where you've got questions or you're unsure if a metal roof is the right step for you or the right investment for you, give us a call. Again, we always talk that we're a customer service company. That comes first, even if you're considering going with a different product, one that Best Buy Metals can't provide, but you've got some questions about the products that we do work with and the industry that we work in. We're very, very happy to spend some time to talk to you about that.
Yep. So if you enjoyed what you're hearing, consider subscribing to the podcast. We've got a video version of this on our YouTube channel. Just search Metal Roofing University. There's also a blog post about this we wrote a while back. If you want to read some more information about the topic we just discussed, go to metalroofingu.com and click on the blog, and you can find that post there. And until then, we'll see you next time.
See you next time.